Yeah, should be out now. Welcome to the official Catchup live edition number 2 here live on our YouTube channel. I've got Chris and I've got Mozza. Chris, how you doing?
Yeah, good, mate. Obviously, we were waiting on Sleeping Beauty there, but sorry, Mozza, I had to dub you in there right away. But no, it's good to be back live. Obviously, it probably will be every couple of weeks if there's news. Really enjoyed last time, actually. To be honest, I don't know about you guys.
I did. It was good, and I think people seem to like watching as well. So obviously, I've got plenty to talk about today.
Who wouldn't want to watch our lovely faces for an hour? Like, who wouldn't? I mean, why would you not want to watch that? Let's be honest.
Where else would you rather be on a Sunday other than your bed?
Well, we know that you like your bed, Mozza, but some of us have been up for about 5 hours this morning.
Day of rest, mate. Day of rest.
Day of rest. That's it. Takes that seriously these days of rest. Anyway, just a quick mention, check out our sponsors, the Soccer Shop Direct. Find them on Twitter at the Soccer Shop D. Check them out. Check our website also at www.thesoccershopdirect.com for all your teamwear and football equipment needs. So plenty to talk about as always on the official catch up. It seems like it's all full of news and, shall we say, controversy perhaps in some quarters, but let's start with the first thing that came out the other day, and the Lowland League looks set to go down the route of points per game, where they will nominate Kelty Hearts as the champions to then therefore contest the playoff against the Highland League team if they have a champion, or against the League 2 team, depending on what happens with the Highland. But we'll come to you first, Mozza. What's your initial thoughts on that decision?
It's been coming. Like, we've discussed this at length, that we, on the assumption of football wasn't going to come back, and I think, to be honest, when we've discussed it, we've not really expected football to come back at our level, have we? We kind of wrote it off that Kelty would be the team getting put forward, and at the time what we all said was, regardless of what you think of points per game, they missed out last year as well. It seems fair enough to give them a chance to go up, and the most important thing, the thing that came out of the chats we've all had, the most important thing is to get that playoff happening, because 2 years it not happening in a row puts it at risk, in my view. Because suddenly League 2 teams can turn around and say, well, do we really want to keep it? And let's not go that route. I understand teams are upset about it. One in particular, a couple of other players obviously interacted away with us. But it doesn't really matter, in my opinion. Like, I'm talking as a BSC man, who our team will drop from second to fourth under points per game. And we still had a run of games that could easily have pushed us right up into the reckoning, if not secured in second spot. So the most important thing league-wise is to get a team into that promotion playoffs, whether they win it or not, for the integrity of the system. And it doesn't really matter where else you fall in the pyramid, in the league, be it second, be it 15th, because we're going to start again. Like, it has no bearing whether you finish second or fourth or fifth, or you don't get a trophy for second. So I'm fine with it, as you can probably tell, and as you can probably tell for the messages I was putting out, that it's not ideal. It's not 50% of games played, but we're not going to get to play 50% of games, and it's the greater good. Simple as that.
Chris?
Yeah, I think the main issue is obviously the 12 games. A lot of people are obviously going on about the 50% thing, but I believe the goalposts have been changed, where it would have been acceptable for Kelty and Brora last season to be nominated again, but I think that's changed, and that's basically why we have to now say Kelty have won the league through PPG. And I think that's where people are getting a wee bit confused, because is it fair that a team wins a league with 12 games played? I mean, no. Not really, but would you rather Kelty didn't get that chance that they were denied last season? I don't think that's fair either. We'll obviously get into it a wee bit more, but you kind of touched on it there with the Bonnie Rig Rose players. They're right. They're right. I think the main difference is they'll miss out on second to East Kilbride on goal difference. I think the difference is like 3 goals. But my opinion there would be like, well, how else would you figure it out if they can't play again? And there has to be some sort of sort of how to work out basically, and East Kilbride are second, and the sort of implications is that Bonnyrigg aren't bothered about the Kelty thing, but they're probably more bothered about East Kilbride pipping them basically, and that's probably maybe to do with if there is going to be league reconstruction, then East Kilbride will get the nod over them, and I think that's where the sort of animosity sort of comes in. And I agree with Robbie Horn. I think it's not fair, but I don't think there's any solution other than somehow they play each other, which I don't think is going to happen. I think the whole thing with Bonnyrigg, we've obviously had our little says on Bonnyrigg, and they've not liked what we've said, or we've not liked what they've said on a few occasions. But there is no agenda against anyone from us or the league. And I think some of the criticism towards George Fraser was not on. We put out a wee thing on the Catchup Twitter. I think it's really unfair on George, suggesting that, because he's BSC, he wants Kelty and East Kilbride. I mean, any team would want that. I would think Bonnyrigg would want that, to get Kelty and East Kilbride out of the league, because to me it's an open league next season if they're both gone. But I think Bonnyrigg and people that support Bonnyrigg and all this sort of stuff, they need to remember George was their biggest supporter of getting them in the league in the first place when they had their licensing issues, and even us as well. But yeah, I'm not criticising Dean Brett or Johnny Brown or Robbie Horn. I think they have to fight their corner, and I think it's fair, their opinions. But I just don't accept that we have an agenda against them, or the league has an agenda against them, or George Fraser has an agenda against them. It's just nonsense, really, to be honest, in my opinion. I don't know if you guys agree, but I certainly, when we've done this whole thing, we have banter, obviously. We've brought up the Bonnyrigg penalty thing, but that's just football, stuff like that. But yeah, I'm all right with Bonnyrigg and them guys. And I just didn't like the George Fraser thing. That kind of annoyed me, because he's the one guy I would say. And I'm not just saying that because obviously you're with BSC, Mozza, and I've met George and I've got on with him. He's the one guy that's really fighting for us. And I think if there was another solution and we could carry on, he would go for that over what we have. But we're backed up into a corner now. We're running out of time. We've had to sort of, I guess, declare Kelty as champions for the obvious reason that we don't want to lose that place, or that playoff, potential playoff into the SPFL, and that's the case in point, really.
Let me just jump in and call out one other wee thing quickly. If George wasn't a man of integrity, he'd be doing everything to keep BSC second, where we sit right now. So, true. In effect, by doing this, he's taking BSC away from the positions that potentially could be league reconstruction promotion positions. His integrity cannot be questioned. He's never done anything that hasn't been for the good of the league. And I challenge anyone to show that he has. So, like, you look at Bonnyrigg, you look at Bo'ness, he's fought to get these teams into the league. The league get expanded to get Bo'ness in to do the right thing. He's been involved in these discussions to make sure we had a voice at the table for the league reconstruction proposals. Whether he agreed with the coast teams or not, he's made sure that our voice has been heard. I just think some of the criticism was completely beyond reproach about him, to be honest. And I've had messages from other people from clubs to that effect as well, just going, can he question the guy? Like, he's a stand-up guy, like, shown by what he's done before. So, simple as that.
I think just on the Bonnyrigg thing, I think something that we think about a lot from the teams in kind of like League Two is the whole self-preservation and kind of make sure look after themselves rather than the kind of the greater good. I think there's a bit of that coming from Bonnyrigg. I would feel like they're obviously looking to protect their house and try and maybe get that position in the reconstructions if it takes place. Do we think the league reconstruction is going to happen? Probably not. Let's be honest. I think the 16 it looks unlikely. If we're lucky, we might get a 14, and then it's one team up from the Highland, one team up from the Lowland. So Bonnyrigg wouldn't even be in the question for that anyway. So they seem to have this concern that everyone's against them. I don't know where that comes from. I don't know why they think like that, but it certainly seems seems strange a lot of the time that they always kind of quick to jump in and kind of take shots at people for the wrong reasons. I always feel.
I don't have any issues with them defending their position. I mean, every club would do the same. I'd expect it of every manager, player. But I think that the anger's sort of put towards the wrong. Like, I can't remember what the words. They're projecting their anger to the wrong people. I think it shouldn't be the Lowland League that they're projecting their anger. Our hand, or the Lowland League's hand, is forced into basically declaring Kelty league champions or whatever. And George can only do so much. He can't suddenly change it. Oh well, Bonnyrigg were hard done by last season. Let's make them second over East Kilbride. I mean, then East Kilbride would be have the same sort of scenario where they'd be a wee bit aggrieved, but I think they're aggrieved anyway, to be honest, by some of the press. But it's a difficult one. It really is. I think it's been said about 1 million times over these situations. You're never ever going to make everyone happy about not finishing a season and all that sort of stuff.
What we should probably do is clarify for people the reason why we're saying goalposts have been changed. So up until last week, the understanding was, as Chris said, that you can null and void and nominate a champion for the playoffs. Tuesday last week, it was clarified by the SFA that couldn't happen, that you had to have a set finish, i.e. points per game, or complete a season. So that's when everything changed. And Robbie actually alluded to it in one of his tweets. I think he said it pretty explicitly, so I feel comfortable saying that now. Kind of getting into trouble. So that's when things changed, and that's why this has happened. For anyone that's wondering. But again, we're kind of turning inwards on ourselves in terms of a league where the issues came for the SFA clarifying something at the last minute. And I feel like it's not a common sense thing again. That surely the common sense thing to do here is say, okay, from last season, you can put Kelty forward again. You don't need to declare the league over with points per game. You can null and void it if you want, but we'll still have the playoff for the good of the system. Apparently not.
Well, I think that's the thing as well about the last 2 years. Let's be honest, it's been a bit of a shit show to try to get season played and seasons finished. So Kelty by rights have been the best team over the last basically 1.5 seasons anyway. So they absolutely deserve their shot. We don't doubt that at all. And I think for Bonnyrigg, I think they should be looking at it and trying to maybe take the positives out of it. If for example, you see Kelty and East Kilbride go up because of a reconstruction, Bonnyrigg are going to be in a very, very good position to be the league champions that following season. You'll get your fans back in, you'll be able to have a good run at the league and potentially cups and be able to properly enjoy potentially winning the Lowland rather than kind of getting nominated promotion for in the League Two because of a reconstruction, and you think to yourself, will they benefit that much from being in the League Two by going up by a reconstruction rather than having a season where they actually potentially could say win a trophy?
The big benefit is you don't need to go through that 2 playoff system, which is just a hassle to try and get up. I mean, I get, like, to play devil's advocate, they finished second last year and they felt that they had a real good chance to beat Kelty to the league last year. So I get where they're coming from, that suddenly they're going to go for that position to missing out in East Kilbride pipping them 1 goal difference. It's rubbish, right? But it's easy for me to see as a guy whose team's not going to be involved in this scenario because we've came just outside these places in both scenarios. But I just feel that this is the way we need to go because we're not playing games anytime soon. So, like, unless we have some kind of convoluted agreement that's not coming for the government that we can play the rest of the games up to halfway to get to 50%, it's just not happening. So it is what it is. Simple as that. Either we get the promotion playoff or we get nothing at all.
Yeah. That's the way I see it.
You've got to protect that promotion relegation that we've always talked about. Last year they got away with it in League Two and got to stay up. By us not nominating a champion this year, that's going to be the same scenario and no one wins. So someone's got to benefit, and unfortunately this time Fortunately for Celtic, it's them. Unfortunately for Bonnyrigg, it's they're lows now. But I say, come back next year and come back stronger and get up that way.
I mean, look on the bright side, if it's breaking it go down, there'll be league reconstruction to save them. So,
Well, exactly. So
that's a joke, by the way.
yeah, banter. That's banter, guys. We've got a comment here from Kirky Oz saying, should league start next year without fans if they are still not getting in?
Yes.
I'll start with that, absolutely. I think I agree with Mozza there. We've got to start, we've got to play. I think looking at the way the world is going, we should be okay to start football in some description. Whether or not we get fans back in, I'm not sure at the moment. You'd like to think so. I mean, people are talking about putting on events indoors for 50 people in May, for example. So there's no reason why football can't have 100, 200 outside in July, for example. I think most football's probably going to start in July to give us that chance of basically getting this season completed in case we run into any problems with third waves and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, absolutely got to have a start. But I'm hopeful we get fans in. What do you think?
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting because obviously that was a lot of grievance with some of the West of Scotland teams of why they didn't start the season. But I don't think they'll go down that line again saying, oh, well, we're not playing because we're not getting fans in. Or certainly I hope that wouldn't be the case because I think everyone's hoping because of the vaccines dropping numbers and that at the moment that we are going to be in a better position come July, August time. So it will be difficult, but I think we discussed this the last time we were on, actually, but I think it probably is more realistic that we'll have some fans in some capacity. I don't know if it's going to be like, 300, 400, but I think there will be some sort of fans in the grounds, if you will.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why there won't be fans, given that we're meant to have the vast majority of people, adults, vaccinated by the end of July. Assuming that holds true, and there's no reason to doubt it just now, then why couldn't we have at least 100 fans in? But even then, it's a matter of time before we get them back, unless something mental happens. Let's not even think about it. So we need to start the season regardless. I think Ben's bang on, and the sooner we can get people through the gates, the better. Simple as that.
Yeah, I think we all want fans back in. That's all clubs are in the same boat in that regard. We're expecting to get fans in. Obviously, it's important for teams to make money to bring the fans in. It's so important to the whole kind of structure of most clubs is to have gates and hospitality and social clubs open and things like that. So absolutely, I think we need that. However, if we do start without fans, I don't think it will be forever like it was this season or the season past, I guess. I think we all started the season in kind of October time, September time, with the basis of we don't expect. I'm not expecting to get fans back necessarily. We hope we'll get fans back, but we never expected it, and most teams planned with their players and things like that to make sure that they could make that happen if it did get to a point where they were making enough money. So I think we 100% expect it to get back at some point, whether that's in July at the start of the season, but definitely we hope to do that at some point. There seems to be a couple of comments here regarding me and Mozza being twins. Well,
Ben's just the hairier one, that's what it is.
That's it. I don't. I was saying to Chris before we came on, my hair's looking great, I must admit. It's like a model's hair, isn't it? It's like
he's gone full Ewan McGregor for Star Wars at the minute.
It's true, man. It's true. It's true. I've got my haircut booked for the 5th of April. Shout out to Fans Barbers, great barbers up in Glasgow. Sort me out, but yeah, I mean, fair play to Mozza if people think it's.
Do you have the high ground, Ben?
Yeah.
The moral high ground.
The moral high ground. Of course. That's it. I don't sleep in as much as Mozza, that's for sure. So I'm probably not quite twins because my sleep-in pattern's not the same.
Aye, we'll give you that.
Never forget, Mozza likes to lie. Right,
let's lie on a Sunday.
It's absolutely not. I wish I could do it myself, personally. I'm just jealous. That's all it is. I've got a comment there from, I know who this is. Something not confirmed, but looking around then, that's it's my chairman who's in watching. I think, as I say, it's not been finalised with the West. We'll come on to the West Point in more detail just shortly. But one of the things that we noticed in the last few days that seemed to rile a few people was the official catch-up essentially breaking the news of what was going to happen with the league. So, Chris, we'll come to you to give us a bit of an insight to what all happened last week.
To be fair, right, I said that I don't know why it was Berwick, but it seems to be like the Berwick directors that had and a Troll one, Pie and Bovril, that had an issue with this. But we never broke any news, really. I mean, half the time we don't know what the clubs don't already know. The way I see it is we're just confirming what people already know or suspect. I don't particularly see any issues within that. I don't want to sound like a Scientologist, but to me that's fair game. If people are already aware, I mean, what was it, half an hour after we posted it, the press got hold of it. So, I mean, Arbroath had mentioned it in their signing of Nicky Lowe. It was on Pie and Bovril the previous night. So I don't see why people have an issue with why we posted it. I mean, it's not even a vote. There's some kind of, I don't know if people consider it like the league's actually voting on it. I don't think that's the case. I might be wrong about that, but I believe the clubs are just getting, they're just getting basically providing feedback. I don't think it's an actual vote, so it doesn't actually affect anything vote-wise because of people's, I guess, bemoanments or arguments or criticisms or whatever. So to me, I just see it as fair game. We're confirming what people already know. And a lot of the time, and this is 100% true, we have coaches, managers, or players asking us questions. And if I've got an answer for them that's not breaking any trust or privacy or anything like that, I'll say it. I'll tell them straight. You know what I mean? But I think we've built over the last sort of 2 years, I feel like we've built a trust with the clubs and the managers, the players. And I don't think we've broken any secret or I don't think it's been an exclusive or a leak, to be honest, because it was already known about. So I don't personally have any issues with posting it, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of clarify things, the only time we've ever had exclusives or such like leaks, if you want to call them that, has been to do with the SFA. We have never ever leaked out anything to do with the Lowland League or any Lowland club before it's been known, and that's deliberate. And that actually goes for West of Scotland and East of Scotland clubs as well, because even going way back to when clubs were applying to the West of Scotland League, we never gave up their names to respect the process and respect the clubs that had applied, even though one club in particular we knew was getting rejected. It just wasn't the right thing to name them.
Yeah.
That still stands because as a podcast, we support non-league. That's our aim, that's our goal. And while we will call out things that are wrong, we'll support things that are right, we're not going in to sabotage anything. So I've been aware of this for a while. And I hate to break this mirage of Mozza leaks everything. I'm afraid that's not the case. I'm more often than not wait till it's out in the public eye somewhere before I'll say something. And that's the right thing to do because when you're entrusted with that information, you can't just be spreading it everywhere. Simple as that. Otherwise, you're not going to get the information. And we're still getting it. So that tells you we've got a degree of trust in the sector we're in. So long may it stay that way. However, I will continue to leak the SFA stuff when it's absolute nonsense.
I think that. Sorry, mate. I think that's another thing, Mozza. We have built up that trust that, as you've mentioned, and as I've mentioned, and we're not here to cause division between clubs. We've said it earlier. I don't personally believe that people like George Fraser or anyone has an agenda for or against any clubs. So it's difficult. Yeah, it's difficult. Yeah, I just saw that.
Shove, love it.
I think.
Yeah, but
I think on that point, Chris, I think Mozza mentioned about the respect thing. I think we all know plenty of people in the different leagues across the Lowland, East and West that that we have absolute respect for the people that give us any information. And I mean, let's be honest, if people see our group chats and then be proper leaking information, you could potentially have.
Yeah.
We have that respect for people, and we're not some mad media outfit that are out to spoil the party all the time. Well, that's not us. We're, as you said, we're here to support non-league football, and this idea that we have an agenda to get exclusives or leak information is mad. We've seen it it was in the press like half an hour later.
Yeah.
But
spoiler alert, they had that before.
Yeah,
half an hour
exactly.
before.
So,
like they had that before we tweeted it. It just so happened that it came out as soon as we tweeted it. Simple.
Yeah, or the fact that we tweeted it meant they probably had to maybe post their information because they didn't want that story to get lost. So that's cool. We're okay with that if that's what they want to do. But we're not in the position of trying to spoil any parties. I think there was a comment about the points per game, like the league standards, if you like, about whether or not we've kind of leaked that detail. Let's be honest, it didn't take a mathematician to work out what the points per game was going to be.
A calculator you can do.
Yeah, exactly. So this idea that we've seen, I think somebody mentioned seen documents or something like that, and I was like,
yeah,
that's not the case. You can just sit and work out the points, who's played what, how many games, and get to the number that works out. So this mad idea that they have, and I don't know why people think like that, but we certainly we took a few shots from people over the last few days, but.
I think we have to say that as well, though, Ben. Like, rarely do we see emails sent to clubs or anything like that. I mean, we in the past? Yeah, we have on a few occasions, but do we actually know what's been said to clubs 100% of the time? No, not at all. So if there's a privacy thing or clubs you can't say anything, blah, 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 at the end of the day, we have been associated with the Lone League in the past, but we're kind of more independent now. So I would say I don't think we're breaking anyone's trust by posting these things. And I said it in the tweet in a reply basically, but I could care less about the exclusive and all this sort of stuff. But when you've got guys from all the different leagues and asking me questions or posting DMs or whatever, like, oh, well, what's happening? And if I know, then I'm going to say to them, and as I said previously, unless it breaks, what we've built up in terms of trust and stuff like that.
Yeah, if someone tells us something, they'll probably tell us, "Oh, you can't say this like publicly." But
yeah,
if someone tells us information that doesn't seem like it's going to be disruptive or upset anyone, then I guess it's fair game. But as I say, it's always back to that level of trust that we have with people that we know. We're not going to do that. That's just normal ethics in it. In life, when someone tells you a secret, you don't start posting it on Facebook and Twitter and saying he said, she said, whatever. It's not the way to do things. Leave that to the big media boys if they want to do that kind of stuff and grab headlines and do that. That's not what we're about. Ultimately, we want to grow the game, make the Lone League, the West Scotland, East Scotland, the South, all a better place for all the clubs, and promote that the best way we can. So. Yeah, this idea, it riles me a wee bit. I'm not going to lie.
Half the time we take the heat for gauging reactions. So we're actually probably taking pressure away from the clubs and the players or whoever else in the league. So the abuse that I've seen over the last few days and a different opinion. So it's not on. Like, everyone's going to have an opinion. Everyone's opinion is going to be different. But we mentioned it earlier. Obviously, I'm not a fan of getting personal, and I think when obviously people were at George Fraser, I thought that was a wee bit unacceptable. Yeah,
absolutely. Can I just say, just to round this side of things off, it still amuses me no end when somebody quotes me in Pie and Bovril as if I'm like some kind of football journalist when I'm a gadget that likes football that's on a podcast. So keep doing it because it's hilarious to me. I love it.
I think this is a great point to end that little comment on there for Mr. Boyd himself. I think I agree with that's it. I think if you look at some of the stuff that's been coming out in the last few weeks, some certain corners in terms of interviews and such, like, we don't post fantasy, we don't post pie in the sky ideas, we just talk what's happening in the game, and that's all it's all about.
I'm not going to get back into my League 3 run. I'm going to move on.
Have we? Don't get me wrong.
Still for it.
Don't get me wrong. We've previously been wrong about stuff, but I don't. Hopefully, no one sees us as a gossip column or anything like that, because we are pretty, I think, reliable in terms of what we say and stuff like that. So, but again, it's because we have, I guess, wary of some stuff and wary of others. But yeah, we don't see everything, club emails and all this sort of stuff that people seem to think we do.
It's certainly there's no mad Malcolm Tucker spin doctor shit going on in the league where people are giving us information because they want to leak it either. So
you should say Chris when we're not live, by the way.
Do you know what I mean? There's no mad like deliberate attempt to try to manipulate us to leak information. We're all in there for the good of the game. So let's close that topic and move on to another one that's been that we want to discuss. It. The fact that there's a few, obviously, the east of Scotland and the west and the south have looked at the kind of null and void. We'll start with the east of Scotland. They're going to head down the potential null and void, but could they perhaps put forward a champion for the League Two, the Lowland League playoff?
They could. I mean, arguably, it would be the sensible thing to do at this point to try and get their champions promoted, given that the other two leagues are null and voided. But the East don't really work that way. Generally, like from our experience, the East of Scotland, I think most people will agree with this as well. They're very independent in mind, and they tend to do what they think is the right thing over what's kind of perceived to be the most effective thing. Like, so they don't try to take the mick. They don't try to take advantage of situations. I think they'll still null and void it, personally, because that's the angle they've been looking at before it became apparent, or maybe if we points per game out, our champion could get promoted. But if any league's got integrity, the East of Scotland's got a bucket load. So I suspect they'll probably still go null and void, despite the fact they could points per game if they really want to.
I don't personally like this accusation that it's the Lowland have any say in what the East of Scotland does. Like, no, you don't want Vale leaving relegated, so the East of Scotland won't promote a champion club or whatever. It's like it's their decision to do that. It's nothing to do with the Lowland League. But I sometimes get the feeling like there's a undercurrent of like somehow the Lowland League dictates to the East of Scotland, and I honestly don't think that's the case. Is it any different to sort of putting forward Celtic Hearts if they put someone like Genefield and Trinent? Well, Genefield have only played 9 games, and I believe someone made the argument that Trinent had only played, a few, games against the sort of bottom sides. That's an argument for Celtic. Apparently, they've had the easiest run as well, so it's difficult. But if I was East of Scotland, I'd probably want to follow Lowland League suit and put a champion club forward. Because I think as much as we want to keep the integrity of the Lowland League into the SPFL and the pyramid and stuff like that, I think it has to be the same below. So I would have no issues if the East of Scotland wanted to put either Genefield or Trinent forward. I know it's an issue for the Trinent in particular. I think they've got a decent backing. Obviously, Callum Elliott's done a brilliant job there. Yep. The team are actually probably good enough for the Lowland League, and similar to Genefield, they've mainly local lads of Perth. They've done brilliant. They could potentially, had football continued, pick Genefield and go further ahead with 3 games in hand. So it's difficult. I think it's always going to be difficult, but the way it's looking for East of Scotland, I think you're right, Mozza. I think they're probably looking more at null and void, similar to West of Scotland, and I'm assuming South of Scotland as well.
Yeah, I think you're right about the integrity thing. I think the Lowland League are shouting to get someone put up to the put up for the playoff, and there's no way that the Lowland League are going to turn and say no, we can't have someone coming up if they do. So it's entirely on the East of Scotland to decide, and I think, as you said, if they've got integrity themselves, they probably will go down the null and void route. But if they did decide to put a champion up, no one would be disappointed. No one would be particularly bothered, I think, either. I think that's the other thing. I think it'd be good for the leagues to have a new team coming up as well. So the East have obviously got a lot of teams licensed anyway, so they've got that bottleneck of teams that are wanting to get up. So why not take the opportunity and potentially put a team up? That would make a lot of sense to me.
You couldn't blame them if they did it. common sense. If you want to get a team promoted, why wouldn't you? And the flip side of that is obviously Vale Leithen might feel a bit aggrieved if they get relegated in these circumstances, but they haven't won a game this season. They've struggled last season. The argument could be made that it might not be kind of that unfair if they get relegated, I guess, despite the circumstances. So it's a tough one. There's no easy decision in a situation like we're in, is there? So much easier when you complete a campaign or at least 50% of games like the intention was. So it's one of these that there's no really a right way and a wrong way.
Yeah, I think you have to look at like Brecon probably were saved last season. They potentially people could probably view it. I mean, I don't really view it that way, but people could view it. Well, Vale Leithen were also saved last season, so now it's like, did we save them again, or did they get relegated? It's a tough choice, especially with the amount of games played in the Lowland League. But I think we have to be fair to East of Scotland if they do choose to pick a team to be a champion. We have to keep that going, and we can't keep 18, 19, 20 team guys in the Lowland League. It's not going to work. So we have to. I think we've said it before, but we have to get back down to 16 in the Lowland League.
That's it. Moving on then to the whole keeping on the topic of null and void. The West of Scotland League have decided to null and void their season already. I think the kind of communication came out that if we didn't know anything by the 3rd of April, then the league would be null and void. The Scottish Government guidance came out basically saying that you can't play football without testing. Testing's not an option for the West of Scotland. So the West of Scotland did the right thing, and I think for me, and decided that should be null and void now, and kind of look ahead to next season and kind of start the West of Scotland League. Get a full season. Let's get a few more teams licensed and things like that, and then get involved in that kind of promotion, relegation playoff into the Lowland League, and make sure that we can have a full season and get back to playing. I think we've got a couple of comments in the chat about the date. We mentioned it briefly earlier on. There was a talk of the 17th of July, the start date for the West, but it's not been confirmed as yet. But certainly, it looks like kind of looking around about that time. So hopefully we'll get football back not too long then, I guess, in that regard.
Fingers crossed. I'm all up for a slightly easier start to next season, given we've not played football in God knows how long now as well. So, bring it on ASAP.
The West of Scotland, I think it was an easier decision because I don't think much was going to change in terms of movement. Obviously, you'll get the likes of Pollock and Talbot back in next season. So I'm looking forward to hopefully a full season West of Scotland next season. I think it's going to be an exciting league. I think it's a wee bit of a shame that the inaugural season is ended like this, but West of Scotland's going to be brilliant. They've obviously got a new board put together. Their social media has been, I think, it's been better in some instances, obviously.
We'll ignore that one day.
We'll ignore that one day, yeah.
Yellow card.
But no, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the West of Scotland. Hopefully, depending on the situation, hopefully we'll get through West, and hopefully maybe meet up with you, Ben, and we'll have a day out one day, I think.
The other thing is there's loads of West teams that are now getting licensed, or about to get licensed. You've got Irvine Meda just got sorted, Cumnock, Kilwinning, Talbot. There's potentially going to be a few Darvel as well. There's going to be a Clydebank, I should have said as well.
Clydebank probably
there's a few teams there that are basically ready to get promoted now. So it's just getting more and more interesting. And I think the time is fast approaching, especially the Lowlands needing to get down to 16, where a couple of teams are going to have to get relegated every year.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Something that was dropped in the comments there, I noticed. I'm going to bring this up just now, just while we were talking. It was from Mr. Boyd himself, who was saying, what do we think of the East and West joint Premier League or Lowland League 2? Now, if Mr. Boyd is posting that comment, is there something more to that then, perhaps, lads, that we have not heard about? Is there potentially a Lowland League 2 in the pipeline?
There's not, I can tell you.
Denied.
Not right now. However, I think I'm just going to speak personal opinion here. This is nothing that I know or whispers that I've heard or anything like
Not a
that.
leak. It's not a leak.
It is not a leak. I personally think long term we need to have a Lowland West and a Lowland East.
Yeah.
I think that's the most common sense way to do it because there's far more teams in the Lowland system than there is Ireland. In playoff wise, I think it would make more sense long term to have a 4-way playoff for the champs, and not necessarily champs because we obviously want automatic relegation included as well, but reps for each of the Highland, Lowland West, Lowland East, and League Two, in some kind of playoff, as well as potentially like some kind of automatic promotion in there. But I just think it makes sense long term for the system to split the Lowland West and East. It could still be under one banner as such as the Lowland Leagues, but it would also give a lot more movement through the pyramid as well.
Yeah, I think the Lowland League 2 is not like a new idea. I'm sure, I don't want to throw them under the bus if I'm wrong, but I think it was civil service strollers a few years ago. This was before the West of Scotland even was a league. They were mentioning obviously maybe making a Lowland League 2 for the better East of Scotland teams, if you will, for lack of a better word. But I think you're right. I think when we start seeing the likes of Clydebank or Kilwinning and all them be coming into the Lowland League, I think that's when we'll then get a split region split West East. But I think that's coming because there's too many good teams. We're talking about West of Scotland, but also in East of Scotland, there's teams obviously that could do a job in the Lowland League. So I think we are looking at a regional split. Basically, what you said, Mozza, in the future, where I think that would be exciting as well.
Definitely.
I hope one thing we've probably not mentioned too much, but obviously the Cup as well, the South Region Challenge Cup, all the teams, the East, the West, the South, Lowland. I hope that gets going as well next season because I do want to see these sort of. I know you often fancied Kelty versus Kilwinning, Ben. That would be a some tie, obviously having had previous with Kelty before. So
we need to draw them in the first or second round because we've got
I was
a
gonna
habit
say,
of
Can I get past hockey this year? So
we got to have a dipping out Scott kind of cup competitions the last couple of years very early, shall we say? And but yeah, I love the idea of the cup. Certainly, getting the chance to play these teams and potentially Lowland League teams and just make a day out of it. I think that'll be a thing for fans as well. Getting these kind of matches where you can go away and we day trip out to go on the bus, get to a social club, a few beers, have the match, and back home and things like that. It'll be really great fun for everyone.
The only other thing with the Lowland League 2 idea I should throw out is I don't like the idea of putting another tier in to the system because there you're saying to all these West of Scotland teams who have came in, they've done the hard work, they might not have their licence yet, or we're going to put another tier above you to make it harder for you to go all the way up to the SPFL, despite the fact you've came in and put all that work in just because you're no licensed yet. So I'm not in favour of making it harder for teams that have came in to go up. Whereas if you split the Lowland West and East, all you're doing is bringing more teams up into a higher tier, and I feel like that's a more sensible way of doing things.
Absolutely. One of the comments there from Shov is asking about the potential new clubs that have applied for the East and the West and a potential for a Midland League, which could be quite interesting. I noticed in the comments there from Collins in the Pyramid Working Group are actually going to meet on Monday to discuss the proposed Midland League. So that could be an interesting setup. In terms of teams who have applied for the East of Scotland and West of Scotland, I think the teams that kind of quite a few of these teams certainly have put out kind of statements saying that they're planning on applying. So in terms of the West, I haven't seen too much personally at the moment. I think there's a bit of a debate. Is it roundabout? Is it Hart Hill? Is it? I think they're one of the teams that kind of they're in the kind of like on the dividing line, if you like. So I think there was talk of, like, for example, Kilbride Thistle, the team that down in kind of Dross and Saltcoats way, closer towards me, and they're looking to join as well. So there's certainly most likely, I think probably 4 or 5 teams potentially have applied. So it'll be interesting to see who does get in and what that'll look like in the for next season.
I really want to say one of the teams because I'm really looking forward to them if they do get in, but I can't. There's a few really interesting ones applied for the West that have really caught my eye that I'd be desperate to go on away day to. But it's basically looking like the East Juniors is essentially going to cease at this point, isn't it? The same way the West did. I think it's about time the Pyramid Working Group got back and sorted out Tayside, because that's the one remaining issue we've got with the Pyramid. And funnily enough, we had a chat almost a year and a half ago now when we were first talking about the West of Scotland and the West Juniors coming over. And we laid out a scenario where we had the Lowland as it is right now, with a West, an East and a South, and the Highland with the North Juniors, the North Cali League, and a Tayside League. And that's almost where we are now.
Yeah.
Albeit called a Midland League, just to make it a bit more inclusive, I guess. But if that happens, and if we can get a Midland League tied into the Highland League, we have a functioning pyramid at non-league, finally. And any other changes, when we've got that in place, will be so much easier. So I'm really hoping it happens, because it'd be a massive step forward for us.
Especially in the East. Sorry, Ben. Especially in the East, the Tayside. I mean, there's a lot of big teams in there, like Lockheed, Tayport. I've actually been to both of them actually a few years ago now, but the massive names in the East in terms of sort of Tayside, if you will. That would be massive even if they created their own league or they went into the East of Scotland. I know, was it Forfar West End applied for East of Scotland? So
yeah.
Well, and we have to sort of wait and see with that, if they're going to be East of Scotland or they're going to have basically a Tayside or Mid or Central Belt League or whatever it's going to be. But I'm looking forward to that. It's good to have them in the pyramid. And I think, was it BSC that played Lockheed in the Scottish Cup last season?
They very nearly beat us. That was a run that we played Hibs eventually. So tells you everything you need to know. I was at that game with Ginge, actually. And it was a great game. Lockheed's a cracking wee club. They could go into the SPFL easy if they get the right squad together, the right run of form, so on. But we can't have a pyramid and pretend it's full when we've got clubs like that looking in on the outside. We need to get your Lockheeds, your Tayports, these clubs involved as well. And that's the one remaining issue, as you say, Chris. As soon as that's resolved with like the East of Scotland and the Highland area, Midland League resolves that. And
who was the centre back who used to play for Dundee United? That was
Gary
playing
Kenneth.
He was. I remember seeing that match, and he was. Oh God, he was an absolute beast, wasn't he?
He had a stormer the first game. He struggled to replay. In fairness to him, I think I might have said something slightly cruel on the live stream about KFC on the outside of the stadium about him. I didn't mean, so apologies, Gary, if you're listening. But he had a stormer that first game. He's some boy,
He's an absolute tank, actually. I was very surprised when... I was surprised that he was still playing when I watched that game, but surprised just he's massive, isn't he?
I think his knees held together by sticky tape at this point.
He's still going
for it.
Fair play to him. Just a comment there. It seems like there's 11 teams have applied for the West of Scotland as it stands. And just to follow up on that, one apparently very interesting team. I think that's probably the one that Mozza is referring to there, because it requires a mega bus journey, or perhaps a plane. Who knows? Or a boat. I mean, could be one of those.
I'll say no more.
We'll leave you. I think if you actually talk, I know we don't like to promote Pie and Burgle too much, but I think it's been discussed in Pie and Burgle already. I'll be honest. So do your homework. You can maybe find out yourself, but we'll not be the team the people to leak information.
Head over to P&B Leaks.
So P&B Leaks will sort you out if you want to find out what the discussion topics. There's a comment there from, I think it was Reedy, around about Darvel. I'm just trying to find it. Where did it go? There was one, I think, Darvel squad is basically still in Albion now, looks like.
Yeah, that's true.
They've got another one today, haven't they?
Yeah, so Cameron Reedy is signed on loan from Darvel to still in Albion. So a good player, I must admit, from seeing him play last season. The ones he looked like a good player. I mean, the Buffs still won that day, but he was a good player, and I think he'll do well at that level. Certainly, it's probably one of these. I think someone referred to it online the other day as one of these blue chip ringers. I thought it was brilliant. These guys that are playing doing are playing at a kind of lower level for whatever reason. Money probably, but who knows? But a blue chip ringer was the phrase used. I thought that's perfect. That perfectly describes some of these guys that are playing around the west and east of Scotland who could definitely do jobs further up the pyramid.
Well, Camelin just sent a boy to Steny as well, didn't they?
That's right, yeah.
I know he's a previous Steny player, but I think that's really interesting. It's not just Lowland and Highland players that are going on loan, it's Tier 6 as well. Shows you there's plenty of talent in that pyramid that still hasn't been opened up to SPFL yet.
I think when we looked at the Darvel squad at the beginning of the season, you'd have looked at them and said a lot of those guys are still functioning players at League 1, League 2, maybe even Championship level, a couple of them, to be honest. So it's no shock that these guys are kind of wanting to get back playing and you obviously can do a job at that level and make sure that they can help out a team in the League 2. Certainly makes a lot of sense. The players themselves they get to keep playing and enjoying their football and when the leagues are obviously done. But
there you go. Alan Docker, his name is Cam's just dropped it in the chat for us.
Free advertising for Mozza.
Was that the Camelin, yeah?
Aye. Alan Docker, the Camelin.
Need to keep in my head for the transfers to the SPFL.
There you go.
Football manager, so
Wikipedia will be up to date later on. Thanks to Chris, of course. Anyone get any more questions for the guys? We can have a chat about anything really in terms of football. One topic we probably want to come on to is the big result of the week. Brora Rangers 2, Harman Lothian 1. Incredible result for Brora. Fair play.
Outstanding.
Oh, definitely.
The fact they hadn't played since December as well. They've had about 5 training sessions. It's just, I'm going to argue that it's the biggest club shock ever. Just purely because of circumstances. Like, they just shouldn't have won it. Simple as that. But funnily enough, I saw a few Hearts boys in the kind of build-up going, we're definitely losing this. Because it's just such a Hearts thing. Like, and then they went and lost their game yesterday with a beauty of an own goal as well. So
that was a top one.
It's almost like the players are wanting to gaff for it. I'm just saying.
I've said to you guys previously, but I don't like sort of discussing Hearts because I hear it from my stepdad every week about how bad they are and all this sort of stuff because he's obviously a Jambo, but oh God, Hearts. That was a shock. I think the Highland League, to be fair, the clubs, despite not playing too many games, have done really well this season in the Scottish Cup. I think it's weird. I think Lowland League last season, then Highland League, it sort of goes from year to year between us, or how well clubs do. Like obviously BSC were the sort of big story last season. I think it could be potentially Brora this season.
I mean, I wonder if the fact that we were playing quite a condensed league schedule maybe affected us in the cup. Like a lot of teams kind of put a wee bit more focus in the league this year just because it was so condensed with games and so on. And the Highland obviously hadn't started at that point. The league side, they only ended up playing a couple of games. So, but you've got to just give all the credit in the world to Brora, don't you? And it's yet another sign. I've seen a lot of people putting the argument out. Davy Seavers obviously being the main man because he's always fighting for the non-leagues, but it's another sign that there's plenty of talent here and we need to open up the bottom of League 2. Simple.
Absolutely. I think that's something we all agree with. In terms of the pro result, absolutely brilliant. It's great to see Hearts make an absolute pig's ear of it. I mean, I'm all for the Hearts thing. I just can't get away with the level of self-entitlement that Hearts fans have because they got relegated. We can maybe argue the fact that they got relegated unfairly, but let's not go into that. They're in the Championship this season. They're about 15 points clear at the top of the Championship, and they're talking about Nielsen out because like a couple of bad results are just like
hiya Cameron, hiya pal.
to be fair,
Scotland's third biggest team according to him the other day.
To be fair, I think we've had this discussion. I mean, I watched Inverness Cali versus Arbroath yesterday afternoon. I wish I didn't, to be honest. I think the quality, no offence to them guys, obviously, but even though I just said that their game was terrible, but I think that the quality in the Championship's really poor. I think you've mentioned it as well, Derek, but I was very surprised at how scrappy it was. There wasn't really any glimpses of quality from the match I watched yesterday afternoon. So Hearts should win that. you should really win it, comfortably. So, from what I gather, I think it's more based on the sort of football that he's playing. If it's that sort of quality, of how Hearts have played in the Championship, I mean, I wouldn't want to watch that or pay 15, 20 quid to go and see that either. To be fair,
I feel like the Championship's getting more scrappy because it's such a tight league, and teams are scared to drop points at this point because they know how tight it is. More often than not, games are won by a bit of quality for a quality player because there's like maybe 2 in each team that are above the level. But I've not seen a really good quality Championship game this year, and I've seen a few of them. Like, there's been excitement, don't get me wrong, but it's not generally through the quality in the park.
Well, that's it. I think if you look at the Hearts squad, maybe there's an issue in motivation to playing against these teams. They probably think that they're much better than the teams. If the fans believe they're the third biggest team in the country, then there might be a bit of that from the players. So they think that they're a lot bigger than we've seen it with Rangers when they were down in the lower leagues. And you're listening to kind of Rangers players and people involved who were there at the time that playing like down at that level was always a bit more difficult. Teams were probably setting up to play 11 men behind the ball a lot of time against Hearts. So there's maybe that difficult where it's just every game's an absolute just a pure mudfest and totally trying to struggle through, and they've done their job. They're going to get promoted anyway, so exactly. that's what they had to do. That's what they set out. I see a lot of talk there about winning the league was the bare minimum for Hearts this year, but I think surely the major aim was to get back into the Prem and take on the teams and try and stake their claim to be that third biggest team again, like they seem to believe. So I just don't like the self-entitlement from Hearts fans. I mean, I'm a Kilmarnock fan. I wish I had their problems, to be honest. They were 15 points clear at the top of the table, and however, Kilmarnock, full disclosure, if we play any teams in a playoff, I think we'll be okay. I think looking at
Kyle laugh at his Barmy Army.
Kyle laugh at you, mind it. We've talked about it plenty of times, boys, but it makes me feel dirty, being able to support it. But do you know what? If the big man keeps us up, then I'm allowed to let bygones be bygones and forget about the past history Kyle and I may have. So, yeah, it's interesting. I think, as I say, you see those games on a Friday night on the Championship on BBC Scotland, and I always do a Zoom thing with my mates and also the game on in the background. But you're right, the quality of it is pretty pish. Yeah. Let's be honest. I think Dundee have been no team I thought really looked like a decent side. Cummings looks like a great player for Dundee. Charlie Adam as well. It goes back to that point you made about a couple of players in a team that makes tries to carry the whole squad through. Hearts have got a team of superstars pretty much in terms of for that level. I mean, they've got even the guys that signed this year even in January look the part, but for whatever reason they just struggle to get through. But they'll get up and that'll be that. But
I think the only game that I've seen at that level this season that I thoroughly was entertained in terms of I thought there was decent play in the park as well was that Dundee Hearts game where it was just goals left, right, centre. And Charlie Adam chipped in a couple as well because I think it was one of the few where, like you said, teams weren't set up to defend against a bigger team. They both went to each other and it was good. But it's one of these things that you can't blame a team for defending against Hearts and try to hit in the break and steal something because clearly it can work.
I'm a big believer, especially for coaches and sometimes players, that you shouldn't go back to a team. I think Robbie Nielsen sort of ruined it by going back when he had, let's face it, he had a safe job at Dundee United. Mm-hmm. I know he has this passion for Hearts, obviously being a former player. I think he was captain as well, if I remember correctly. But yeah, he's ruined it now that he's went back, and I think it's pretty cursed. I mean, how many people that went back to a club have gone and really do well? I don't think there's many, to be honest.
Oh, you got to admire Cam's optimism.
Cam, I've got to give Cam a shout out here. He's the most positive Stenhousemuir fan I've ever met in my life. Got it handed to him. He has a massive positivity around a mid-table League Two team. So fair play, Cam.
Mid-table.
lower mid-table. Yeah, let's just call him a bottom feeder in that regard. But another comment we just had there from Shove I wanted to bring back up was when the conference is stopping from next season, will clubs be happy potentially playing in a West Division 4 in the Tier 10, while some other leagues only go down to a Tier 6. I think on that point, I think they're going to have to. I think if there's a tier 10, if you like, just because the size and scale of the West of Scotland teams involved, I mean, that's what it's going to be like. I think next season in the Premiership, for example, you're going to have seven relegated, I think it is, to get back down the number. So that's going to be some league when the relegation opens up, because if you get stuck in that bottom half of the league, you're potentially going to go down. Never mind that. So I think absolutely, I think it's important that the new teams that come in will have to go into Tier 10, and whether that's maybe Rangers, Colts, and Celtic Colts at some point, who knows? But that would be a good laugh at some point to see them come into Tier 10.
Let's not start that discussion, please. Let's not go down that route. I mean, to be fair, it's a decision for the West of Scotland clubs. They've got their own board now. The league's there. The clubs themselves will decide what the future structure is. If they're happy with the Tier 10 side of things, they'll vote it in. If they'd rather keep conferences, they'll keep them going. Because that's what's happened in the East. Like, the conferences were meant to stop, but they kept them going an extra year, and here we are, obviously, through circumstance. But I quite like the conferences, to be honest. I wouldn't be totally against them being taken away, even if they're moved down a tier. So, like, say if you had a Premiership, Championship, 10 conferences.
Yeah.
I just think, especially if they're mixed up every year, I think it gives a wee bit of something different, and you've always got the carrot of getting up to a higher level rather than having to work your way through other levels.
Yeah, I guess the thing they could maybe need to do though is make that more localised if they're going to do the conferences at that level. It'd have to be. I know we've seen a few issues last season where there was kind of Ayrshire teams who were kind of badged in with Glasgow teams and not really in against anyone in Ayrshire. I think you'd have to see that kind of. What would you probably have, like a kind of an Ayrshire division, a Glasgow division, and then I don't know, a kind of Lancashire division or something like that, to make it work. But I think it's not a bad idea personally, having the conferences at that probably what Tier 8 it would be maybe if you have the Tier 6, Tier 7. But certainly it'd be interesting. But at the moment there's no alternative. I think that's the thing. If teams want to play in the West, it's going to have to be that Tier 10 to Tier 6 level, and that's what they're just going to have to deal with until maybe there's a bit of discussion about maybe changing that around. But that maybe will come in a few years when we maybe talk about these lowland League 2 type idea that we talked about earlier on. That maybe that's the point, maybe to bring the conferences into play in that regard. But it'll be interesting to see. I'm looking forward to the West of Scotland League next year. I think it'll be exciting having that 7-team relegation battle. I think, as I said, you don't want to get caught in that because that could be bad. I mean, if you go down, certainly there could be potentially some bigger teams. They could get caught in that. I think we have Dallas talking about Troon in this podcast, but no one expected to see them second in the league this year. I think we expect them to be firmly close to the bottom, and for whatever reason they've done well. So it's not going to be a walkover for the bigger teams in the West by no stretch. And if you get stuck in there, it's going to be difficult. A couple of seasons to get back out potentially.
Surprised nobody's mentioned Ryan Stevenson after that, but we'll move on.
He's that Albion Rovers now, mate. Albion Rovers.
Right. He is indeed.
You might potentially feel relegation then.
Oh God.
Poor Ryan. Anyway, let's see. Any more comments in the chat from anyone who wants to drop in? Any questions, any comments you want to discuss? But if not, we'll probably wrap it up pretty much at the end. Chris, you want to just a quick comment about obviously we've seen the news in the last week about Glenn Kamara and the racism for the Slavia Prague players. Just make a comment about that.
Yeah, just to obviously say that we stand with Glenn Kamara and all of Scottish football against obviously discrimination and racism. There was plenty being said by clubs, obviously making a stand against Slavia Prague. Me in particular, saying that I would support Arsenal beating them. Obviously, a big Spurs fan like yourself, Ben. So no. It is what it is. We've discussed racism a few times on this podcast. It's probably not really much to do with non-league, but it's a society issue, so I think it needs the respect. And now that I think I noticed something yesterday where Thierry Henry obviously went off social media, which is just unacceptable. I mean, the fact that you can actually message anyone you want on Instagram and give them racist abuse or any type of abuse is just, they need to sort that out, basically, in my opinion. But certainly, in terms of what happened, hopefully it gets dealt with. I don't think it will, unfortunately. I think it will just be, I don't think UEFA have even released a statement or anything, but we need to start making a stand against these sort of things that happen. And yeah, we stand with Glenn Kamara and we're obviously against Slavia Prague with their nonsense that they posted and behind their player that clearly was in the wrong.
They put the right statement they should have put out 3 days later when they suddenly realised, I think. That just the whole thing's an absolute nonsense. Like, they were clearly apologists for racism in that club. I noticed, by the way, the wee weasel's wussed out of going to Wales for his national team because he's scared that he'll get questioned by Police Scotland. He was trying to cite personal safety despite the fact there's 300 miles between Wales and Scotland, so work that on it. But it's, as you say, Chris, it's a small thing that represents a massive issue. It's one incident in like several every single day, every single hour. It feels like that. See some of the pictures you see with footballers on Instagram DMs. It's disgusting. It's long since past time that social media sites need to ban people. Like they need to have an automatic filter or flagging system, which they can do because I've done it before. You look at what they did to bots with Donald Trump and all that. It can be done clearly. So why are they not doing it? Like, they're going to have to get forced to do it, in my opinion. Like, because they've had all the chances in the world to sort it, or at least make an effort on it. Going all the way back to Marcus Rashford when he first started talking out, and nothing's been done. So I'm not going to lie, I'm beginning to lose a wee bit of faith in kind of the likes of your Twitters and Instagrams that they actually care. Just, it's a nonsense. But I'm happy to see all Scottish football clubs came out in full support, and obviously they would, but it felt more than that. It felt more than a token tweet. There was a genuine kind of standing shoulder to shoulder feeling, and long may that continue.
A brilliant gesture from Scott Brown as well.
The
Old Firm game. Yeah. It's a difficult one. It's always going to be a difficult subject for people, but I think we more needs to be done, and it needs to be done higher up in terms of what you were saying there. Twitter, Instagram, in terms of football, UEFA, they need to take the Champions League money away from the clubs. Don't let them have any fans. Take their money, and then we'll see how quickly things will change. If they're not getting Champions League money, they're not going to be getting much money in the Czech League. No disrespect to the Czech League, but it's the Champions League money that clubs want. If you take that away, I'm pretty sure things will change very quickly. Yep.
Absolutely. And on that note, I think we all agree that with the idea that money's done, and as I say, we stand with Glenn Kamara for sure. I think it's disgraceful, quite frankly, in that that'd be the end of the discussion here. So I think we'll just wrap up here on the official catch-up live edition number 2. The usual stuff, you can catch us on all the good social media sites. Chris, where can we find us?
At Rampant FM on Twitter, and you can get me on YouTube as well.
Mozza?
At Mozza Plays on Twitter. You'll find me through pretty much everything through there. And
I'll be on Twitter at Mr. Ben Grant. Just a final word to our sponsors. Remember to check out our sponsors, the Soccer Shop Direct. Find them on Twitter at the Soccer Shop D. Check out the website www.thesoccershopdirect.com for all your football team wear and equipment needs. Thanks all for watching, and we'll be back in a few weeks. Cheers.